Behind the velvet voice and soulful melodies of David Ruffin, a turbulent story was unfolding. The lead singer of The Temptations, known for his signature raspy vocals on hits like My Girl, was living a double life. While his career soared, his personal life was anything but harmonious. From his unexpected firing from the group to a complex love life, David Ruffin's story is filled with drama and intrigue. What do you think led to his departure from The Temptations? Let's dive in and find out. David Ruffin was a powerful soul singer who rose to fame with The Temptations during their golden era, the classic Five period. He was known for his incredible voice, but also for being a bit of a handful. After leaving The Temptations, he tried his hand at a solo career, putting out 10 albums of his own. He even teamed up with his brother Jimmy for an album and did another one with another Temptations singer, Eddie Kendrick. He even got to perform with Hall & Oates. Sadly, despite all the talent, things didn't always go smoothly for David. Early life. David Ruffin's story began in Wynot, Mississippi on January 18, 1941. Tragedy struck early on when his mom, Ophelia, passed away just 10 months after he was born. His father, Eli, who worked as a truck driver, remarried a schoolteacher named Erline in 1942. David grew up with his siblings, but his childhood wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. His dad was a strict disciplinarian, and things could get rough at times. Despite the challenges, music became a constant source of joy and a way for the family to connect. The Ruffins traveled as a gospel group, performing at churches and even opening for legendary acts like the Five Blind Boys of Mississippi and Mahalia Jackson. Young David found his voice singing at church and even participated in talent shows, showcasing his natural talent. By the age of 14, David felt a calling to a higher purpose. He left Mississippi for Memphis with a minister named Eddie Bush, intending to pursue a life in the ministry. While faith played a role in his upbringing, music's pull proved to be stronger. By 15, David was already hitting the road. He traveled with a jazz musician named Phineas Newborn to perform at a fancy place called the 50 Grand Ballroom and Casino. Sounds impressive. Back home, he used the name Little David Bush and sang at talent shows. He even joined a gospel group called the Dixie Nightingales. For a short while, he even sang with another gospel group called the Soul Stirrers, after one of their singers left. Finally, at 16, he moved to Detroit with the Bush family to chase his musical dreams. Early years. When David Ruffin moved to Detroit with the Bush family, he got his first taste of recording. He cut 2 songs, You and I and Believe Me, under the name Little David Bush, his guardian's last name, back in 1958. The music was different from what he'd heard before, smoother pop and R&B, not the gospel he was used to. In 1957, David met a young Berry Gordy Jr., who dreamed of starting his own record label. David even lived with Berry's dad while he helped build the headquarters for what would become Motown Records. His brother Jimmy eventually signed with Motown, too. David also got to work with another future legend, Marvin Gaye, at a smaller record company run by Berry Gordy's sister. He was basically an apprentice, learning the ropes of the music business. Berry Gordy's sister, Gwen Gordy Fuqua, who ran a record company with him, remembered David as a polite and respectful young man. But what really stood out to her was how seriously he took his music. He practiced like he was performing live every time. David even said he used to pack records with another future legend, Marvin Gaye, back in the day. Before joining the Temptations, David wasn't just a singer. He played drums in a doo-wop group called the Voice Masters. They even recorded some songs together, including I'm in Love. Interestingly, a few other future Motown stars were in this group, like Lamont Dozier, a producer, and some members of another singing group called The Originals. David even tried going solo with Anna Records, but those songs didn't quite catch on. David's brother Jimmy, who was already a singer with Motown, told him a local group called The Temptations needed a new tenor singer. David knew one of the guys in The Temptations, Otis Williams, and let him know he was interested in joining. In early 1964, a spot opened up in the Temptations after they let go of one of their original members. David got a chance to sing with them on stage at a New Year's Eve party, and they liked him so much they offered him the job. This was his big break, and his first recording session with the group was just a few days later. The Temptations. By 17, David had a shot at a record deal with Chess Records in Chicago. It wasn't a big hit, but it showed his talent was getting noticed. He then moved to Detroit, where he met Berry Gordy, the man behind Motown Records. David even recorded an album with a group and signed with a smaller Motown label, but their music just didn't take off. His big break came in 1963 when he joined the Temptations. David Ruffin's arrival in the Temptations marked a turning point for both the group and his own career. His soaring vocals became the centerpiece of their sound, and their first collaboration, My Girl, became a runaway hit in 1965. The song wasn't just a chart topper. It became their signature tune, forever linked to David's soulful delivery and the Temptations' smooth harmonies. This success cemented David's role as the lead singer and frontman, and his passionate performances made him a star in his own right. The hits kept pouring in after My Girl. David's powerful vocals captivated audiences on a string of soulful classics like Ain't Too Proud to Beg and the yearning ballad I Wish It Would Rain. He even shared the spotlight with another Temptation, Eddie Kendricks, on the beautiful duet You're My Everything. David wasn't just a gifted singer, he was a captivating performer. Standing tall at 6'3" with a dramatic stage presence, he commanded attention. One of his bandmates, Otis Williams, fondly remembered David's early days with the group, highlighting his comedic personality and strong work ethic. Back then, they even had a nickname for him, Ruff, for short. With his talent, charisma, and dedication, David Ruffin became an integral part of the Temptations' success, leaving an undeniable mark on Motown history. Things started getting rough for David and the Temptations around 1967. He fell into a bad habit with cocaine, which made him miss practices and shows. Not good for a band. He even stopped traveling with the other guys, preferring to ride in a fancy limo with his girlfriend at the time. Around the same time, Diana Ross got her own name put on the Supremes, becoming Diana Ross and the Supremes. David thought this meant he should be the star of the Temptations too, and wanted to change their name to David Ruffin and the Temptations. This caused a lot of tension with Otis Williams, one of the leaders of the group. On top of the ego clashes, David started asking a lot of questions about the band's money, wanting to see the books. This rubbed Berry Gordy, the head of Motown Records, the wrong way. Why he got fired. With Ruffin as the new lead singer, he started hogging the spotlight, which was great for the band's fame, but not so great for keeping everyone happy. Things got worse because of his unpredictable behavior, which people whispered was due to cocaine use. On top of that, Ruffin started demanding special treatment, like stuff the other guys didn't get. He even wanted to change the band's name to David Ruffin and the Temptations, kind of like what happened with Diana Ross and the Supremes. This whole me-first attitude finally pushed the band over the edge. They fired him in June 1968. Solo career and legal troubles. Ruffin was still under contract with Motown Records when he left the Temptations, and he embarked on a solo career, finding some success with My Whole World Ended, The Moment You Left Me, in 1969. But success was fleeting, and Ruffin dropped out of the music business for 3 years, emerging in 1975 with a top 10 single, Walk Away from Love, and a few minor hits. In 1979, he joined Warner Brothers after leaving Motown, but instead of a new beginning, it marked the beginning of the end for Ruffin. Ruffin's first solo shot was a song called My Whole World Ended, The Moment You Left Me, that was originally meant for the Temptations. It did great, hitting the top 10 charts for both pop and R&B in 1969. He released another album that same year called Feelin' Good. He even recorded a whole new album called David in the early 70s, but Motown locked it away in the vault, and it didn't come out until way later, in 2004. Ruffin teamed up with his brother Jimmy in 1970 for an album called I Am My Brother's Keeper. They had a couple of smaller hits with songs like When My Love Hand Comes Tumbling Down and Your Love Was Worth Waiting For. It took a few years, but he finally put out another album for Motown in 1973, simply called David Ruffin. Things started well for Ruffin's solo career, but sadly, it took a turn for the worse. Some folks say it was because of his cocaine habit, and others say Motown just didn't give him the push he needed. Either way, his career wasn't what it could have been. Ruffin didn't quite strike gold again until 1975 with a song called Walk Away From Love. This one, produced by Van McCoy, was a real hit, climbing all the way to number 9 on the pop charts in the U.S. It even crossed the pond and did well in the U.K. too, making it into their top 10. The song sold a ton of copies, over 1 million in fact, and even earned him a gold record. After leaving Motown in 1977, Ruffin decided to try his luck at a new record company, Warner Brothers. He put out 2 albums with them in the late 70s. Things didn't quite work out there, so he switched labels again, this time to RCA. Here's a cool twist. He teamed up with his old buddy Eddie Kendricks from The Temptations. Seems Kendricks was having some issues with the group too, so they decided to join forces. Things got a little rough in the early 80s. Ruffin had some trouble with the tax man and ended up in jail for a bit. On a brighter note, that's also when he joined The Temptations' reunion tour in 1983. Unfortunately, his old habits came back to haunt him and he missed the first few shows. But hey, at least he eventually got on stage with them. They even had a special performance with some big names like Hall & Oates at a fancy concert in New York and even joined them for the Live Aid concert. In 1985, David teamed up with his old buddy Eddie Kendricks, who dropped the S from his last name now, for some shows. It was a reunion for Temptations fans. That same year, they got to perform with Hall & Oates at the reopening of a famous theater in New York. Their performance was so good, it even came out as an album and a single that did really well. They even sang some Temptations classics with Hall & Oates at a big charity concert called Live Aid. One of their songs, a mashup of The Way You Do the Things You Do and My Girl, even got David his first and only Grammy nomination. That's a big deal. Things seemed to be going well, and David and Eddie even wrote a song with John Oates from Hall & Oates. Unfortunately, things went sour between the groups, supposedly because of David's drug problems. After getting inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame with the Temptations in 1989, David, Eddie, and another former Temptations singer, Dennis Edwards, decided to join forces for a new project. They called themselves the former leads of the Temptations, and even went on a successful tour in England. They were making plans for another tour in Europe when David sadly passed away. He had even just finished recording a new song called Hurt the One You Love, Love Affairs. David Ruffin met Tammy Terrell when she joined the Motown Revue, and as the tour went on, she became an opening act for the Temptations, setting the stage for their tumultuous romance. In 1965, she fell for David Ruffin, the charismatic lead singer of the Temptations. The spark between them was undeniable, and things seemed promising at first. However, the relationship quickly took a nosedive. David surprised Tammy with a public proposal on stage, a gesture that should have been a fairy tale moment. Instead, it turned into a nightmare. The truth came crashing down when Tammy discovered he was already married with a family back in Detroit. This devastating revelation, coupled with David's struggles with drug addiction, created a volatile situation. Their arguments became constant and increasingly heated. Tammy even confided in Ebony magazine that her frequent headaches seemed to worsen after these fights, hinting at the immense emotional strain she was under. It's clear that this relationship, which started with such hope, became a source of immense pain and stress for Tammy. Sadly, things took a violent turn in 1967. Terrell ended the relationship with Ruffin after he attacked her with his motorcycle helmet. There were even rumors of another incident involving a hammer, which would have been terrible news considering her ongoing health struggles. On a brighter note, Terrell found love again. By the time she passed away, she was actually engaged to a doctor named Ernest Ernie Garrett. He wasn't just any doctor, he was actually treating her at the hospital. 2. Marriage. David Ruffin's love life was a roller coaster ride. He tied the knot with Sandra Barnes all the way back in 1961. Together, they built a family with 3 daughters, Cheryl, Nedra, and Kimberly. David also had a son with his longtime girlfriend, Jenna Sapia. They met in 1964, and their relationship blossomed, even though they never walked down the aisle. Their son, initially named David E. Sapia, eventually became David Eli Ruffin, Jr. Sadly, David Sr. passed away, and Jenna even took his last name as a tribute to their love and for their son. In 1976, David gave marriage another shot with Joy Hamilton. This relationship, however, wasn't meant to be either, and they eventually separated. Fast forward to 1989, and David found himself living with Diane Showers. They were together until his passing in 1991. Nedra Ruffin. Nedra Ruffin, the loving and kind daughter of the late R&B singer David Ruffin of The Temptations, left a lasting impression on those who knew her. She passed away at the age of 58 due to complications from COVID-19, leaving behind a legacy of love and generosity. Nedra, a Detroit resident, attended Mumford High School and led a fulfilling life as a model, bartender, hospice caregiver, and ballroom dance instructor. Nedra's daughter, Terea Frazier, fondly recalls her mother's passion for dancing and the stories she shared of her time with her famous father. Frazier, who was an infant when David Ruffin passed away, cherishes the memories of her mother's experiences at concerts, in the studio, and riding in his convertible Corvette. Cheryl Ruffin Robinson, Nedra's sister, remembers their close bond and Nedra's loving and giving nature. She will deeply miss their sisterly get-togethers and the unique connection they shared. Lamont Robinson, brother-in-law to Nedra and founder of the National Rhythm and Blues Hall of Fame, highlighted Nedra's instrumental role in getting a street in Detroit renamed David Ruffin Avenue in honor of her late father. A street in Meridian, Mississippi, was also renamed David Ruffin Boulevard in October 2019. Nedra Ruffin, affectionately known as Nee and Special, cherished her role as a grandmother and loved to travel. She found purpose in assisting Narcotics Anonymous and proudly maintained her sobriety for 28 years, a testament to her strength and determination. Despite facing various health issues in recent years, Ruffin remained active and dedicated to her family. However, after returning from a trip to Las Vegas, she began experiencing confusion, fatigue, and breathing difficulties, ultimately leading to her hospitalization the day after Mother's Day. Sadly, her condition worsened, and she was placed on a ventilator in the intensive care unit. Nedra Ruffin passed away surrounded by the love of her family, leaving behind a loving legacy. She is survived by her mother, Sandra Ruffin, a son, Clifford Pearson, daughters Terea Frazier and De'Aris Frazier, 6 grandchildren, sisters Cheryl Ruffin Robinson and Kimberly Moans Ruffin Jones, and a brother, David Ruffin, Jr. The impact of Nedra Ruffin's life extends beyond her family, as she touched the lives of many through her kindness and strength. Her memory will forever be cherished by those who knew and loved her. David Ruffin, Jr. David Ruffin's legacy extends beyond his own music. His son, David Ruffin, Jr., or D-Ruff as he likes to be called, carries the torch for his father's soulful sound. D-Ruff isn't just a tribute act, though. He's a passionate performer who keeps his dad's music alive for new generations. Fans got a glimpse of his talent on the Fox TV show I Can See Your Voice in 2022. But D-Ruff is more than just a singer. This multi-talented artist is a songwriter and actor as well, carving his own path in the entertainment industry. He's collaborated with some big names in hip-hop, like the Grammy-nominated Skee-Lo and the legendary Doc Ice of Houdini and UTFO. D-Ruff is a testament to the power of following your dreams, even if they run in the family. He's creating his own artistic legacy while honoring his father's unforgettable voice. Cheryl and Kimberly. David Ruffin's influence extends far beyond his iconic voice. His daughters, Cheryl and Kimberly, have embraced the entertainment industry, becoming vital conduits for preserving their father's legacy. While specific details about their individual careers might be limited, it's evident that they share a deep-rooted passion for music and the arts. Their connection to their father's extraordinary life undoubtedly shapes their own paths. Cheryl and Kimberly's involvement in the entertainment industry is a testament to the enduring power of David Ruffin's music. Their contributions help keep his memory alive and introduce new generations to the soulful sounds that made him a legend. Did he murder someone? David Ruffin, a talented musician, faced challenges with drug addiction and legal troubles throughout his life. He first sought treatment for drug addiction in 1967 and continued to struggle with substance abuse issues. In 1978, he was arrested at a birthday party in Memphis and charged with disorderly conduct, facing allegations of making threats against policemen and their families during his transport to jail. Ruffin denied these claims and was released on his own recognizance. Unfortunately, legal troubles continued for Ruffin, and in 1982 he was charged a significant fine of $5,000 and sentenced to 6 months in a low-security prison in Terre Haute, Indiana, for failing to pay taxes amounting to over $300,000 between 1975 and 1977. He served 4 months of his sentence and was released early for displaying good behavior. In 1986, David's troubles took a turn when he was caught with a stolen gun. He opted not to contest the charges and ended up with a fine, but thankfully, other accusations against him were dropped. This should have served as a wake-up call, but sadly, it wasn't. Just a year later, in 1987, the police raided a house where David was present and found cocaine. He was arrested and released on bail. The court case eventually found him guilty of using cocaine, not selling it, which was a lesser charge. However, the judge still sentenced him to 2 years probation and required him to do community service. Despite this brush with the law and the chance to get clean, David's struggles with addiction continued. In 1989, he violated the terms of his probation 3 times, resulting in a court order mandating drug rehabilitation. He completed a 28-day program, but overcoming addiction is a long and difficult journey, and David's story reflects that ongoing battle. Sad death. It's a sad ending, but after a successful tour in England with his old buddies Kendricks and Edwards, Ruffin tragically died on June 1, 1991. The official cause of death was a heartbreaking one, an accidental overdose of crack cocaine. According to reports, he collapsed at a crack house in West Philadelphia with a friend. Despite his friend rushing him to the hospital, medical personnel spent nearly an hour trying to revive him. But sadly, their efforts were unsuccessful. Whispers of foul play swirled around his death, fueled by the disappearance of a large sum of cash he was supposedly carrying. However, authorities never found any evidence to support these rumors. His girlfriend at the time, Diane Showers, though heartbroken by the news, wasn't entirely shocked. She knew about his struggles with drugs and how having money sometimes led him down a dark path. Her statement reflected this: "When David had a lot of money, he would be able to do things that he wanted to do," she said, hinting at the self-destructive tendencies that may have played a role in his tragic demise. The TV miniseries about the Temptations took some creative liberties with the story of David Ruffin's death. They showed him being dumped in front of a hospital, all beat up, and then left for dead. Yikes. That's pretty dramatic. In real life, things were different. According to his family, he was actually taken to the hospital by car, and his identity was known. They even said his body was claimed by a family member within a few days. The family sued the show's makers for making it seem like he died alone and forgotten, but the court case didn't go their way. David's funeral was a big send-off at New Bethel Baptist Church in Detroit. His old bandmates, the Temptations, even sang "My Girl" for him. That must have been emotional. Big names like Stevie Wonder and Aretha Franklin showed up to pay their respects with some powerful singing, too. Michael Jackson even offered to cover the cost of the whole thing, though he couldn't make it himself. Lots of other famous folks sent flowers, too, showing their love for David. He's buried at Woodlawn Cemetery in Detroit. Mystery behind his death. Things got even sadder in June 1991. David had just finished a successful tour with his old friends Eddie Kendricks and Dennis Edwards. They each got paid $50,000, half in cash and half in a check. For some reason, David decided to take all his money in cash and carry it around in a briefcase. Dennis Edwards remembered talking to David that day, and David mentioned having all that cash with him. David's daughter, Nedra, even thinks someone might have known about the money and wanted to steal it from him. That's a terrible thought. Here's the weird part. When David ended up in the hospital, he only had $53 in his pocket. No briefcase, no big wad of cash. What happened to the money? No one knows for sure, and it adds another layer of mystery to David's sad story. Awards and honors. David's talent was recognized even after he was gone. Back in 1985, the Temptations, including his work with the group, got nominated for a Grammy for their performance of "The Way You Do the Things You Do, My Girl." Then, in 2013, the whole group received a Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award, and his kids even got to accept it for him. That same year, David himself was inducted into a special Hall of Fame for rhythm and blues music, both for his solo work and his time with the Temptations. Mississippi's Music Hall of Fame also honored him. David's legacy lived on in his hometown, too. In 2019, a street in Detroit where he used to live was renamed David Ruffin Avenue. His birthplace, Meridian, Mississippi, even named a section of a street David Ruffin Boulevard after him. He also got a star on a special Walk of Fame in Mississippi. Thank you for watching. Remember to subscribe and click the notification bell to stay updated on our future videos. See you in the next one.